so glad that you decided to join us this evening and travel to Ireland with us. For those of you who are familiar with the format of the virtual travel series, we go through, traveling across that destination. And for this specific virtual tour, we are going to make an authentic Irish coffee. So let's dive in. I'm going to ask all of you for a second to think about, what does travel mean to you? And I know that this is a very interesting time to reflect back and think about travel again, all of our memories. And I am supposed to be in Iceland and south of England these days. Surprisingly, it's not happening. But so think about travel and what it means to you. I wanted to read this, one of my favorite quotes that says, "Never lose your sense of wonder." No matter where you are at in life, it's important never to lose your sense of wonder. Stay curious about what's out there and don't be afraid to find out. The world is waiting to be seen by you. Go out and learn something new. And the fact that you're here to learn about Ireland and to travel with us and to take something with you, it's impressive. So for those of you who are familiar with me, this is going to be repetitive, but for those of you who are new, my name is Leila Levy, and I have a boutique travel concierge called Travel Design by Leila Levy. And again, those of you who don't know, my background is I was an engineer, and I worked in technology, digitization, transformation for many years. And I was passionate about travel, and I decided a few years ago to pursue my passion of travel. And one of the things that I saw as a need was customized and personalized travel, as this was something that I needed it for myself, and I didn't see that happening in the marketplace that much. So what I do, I have a very small team here in Toronto, and what I do, obviously, I have a travel agency as well, but my main focus is building, customizing, and because everyone is different. We're all so very different. We travel differently, and that's what I curate, and my team, we curate to those travel needs, and again, make all the arrangements from cruising, hotel, guides, but more importantly, it's the travel planning to begin with, and then the second part would be the travel coordination and arrangement. And it goes, to everything that you could possibly imagine. And we also deliver our itineraries through an app. So it's very, automated. People just receive something, the app in their cell phone, and you just need to follow. That's simple. I am an Ireland specialist, actually, but I have someone super special today who is my guest speaker taking us to Ireland. So let me introduce you to Sandra, who is joining us from Tourism Ireland. So Sandra, introduce yourself to us, please. We can't wait. We can't wait to get to know you.
So yeah, thanks Leila, and thanks everybody so much for your interest in Ireland and for taking the time, whether it's 1 a.m. or 6 p.m. here in Toronto, and for joining us. I really appreciate it. And so I've been a member of the travel industry for over 10 years, and travel is my passion, my absolute love. And I began my career in Ireland with Visit Dublin. So they're the destination marketing organisation for Dublin, our capital city in Ireland. And that's where I'm born and raised. It's where I spent most of my life. I moved to Toronto in 2015, and I did some work similar to Leila, I suppose, in a digital kind of environment for a couple of years. And I had a travel client, Costa Rica actually. And it made me realize that as much as I loved media and digital and, working on websites, I missed travel and the industry so very much. So after working on that client, I decided that I wanted to reconnect with Ireland and reconnect with the travel industry. And then I joined Tourism Ireland in 2018. So ever since then, I've been working with travel designers like Layla and tour operators here in Canada, working with the airlines to get Canadians to visit the country that I love and the country that I call home.
Excellent. So before diving in to Ireland, I wanted to also give you a little bit background on these virtual travel series. So if you're familiar with the format, so this is, obviously after COVID lockdown happened across globally, I would say, I started to think about going back to one of the things that I love, which is educating and inspiring people. I totally forgot to ask you to follow me on Instagram. So go to Travel Design by Layla on Instagram or check out my website. But I'm very passionate about providing education and inspiring people to travel. So after the COVID lockdown, I was thinking about how do I do that and how do I keep the spirit of travel alive? And for that reason, I created those virtual travel series. And as part of that, and this is our week number 12, believe it or not, that we've traveled every Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to one destination in the world. And one of the things that I love to talk about is, the country globally, some food, festivals, traditions, all the things that you need to know. And so far, we've traveled to South Africa, Morocco, Peru, multiple safari experiences, and Antarctica. We've done wine tasting in south of Spain. We were in Colombia last week and did some coffee experiences. And today we are going to travel to Ireland. So I'm just going to ask everyone to buckle up as we are going to explore Ireland. So why Ireland should be on your bucket list. One of the things that I really, really love about Ireland is the fact that there are castles that you can actually stay in. So it's not only the fairy tale castles that you could see in the pictures, but there are very nice castle stays that you could have when you're traveling to Ireland. And Ireland has become very famous in movie industry. So Game of Thrones, there are, Star Trek movies. We're going to talk about some of those in more details, but it's the same thing as I would say Iceland as well. A lot of those destinations, a lot of places has been very popular in movies. The food is fantastic in Ireland, and Sandra is going to share some of the Irish specialties, some of the food experiences that you could have there. But there are 16 Michelin stars, and now there are 5 more added. So the food is fantastic. And again, the pub, the music, I don't think that there are anywhere else in the world that you could travel and have an amazing beer in a pub while the music is so live and everyone is dancing. And again, Sandra is going to talk about some of those Irish dances as well. And one of the things that's special about Ireland, and we're going to talk about it extensively, is world's longest defined coastal driving route is located in Ireland. And I don't need to tell you about, Guinness, how important that is. And again, some of very interesting festivals. Some of you may recognize St. Patrick's Day, but there are so many other interesting festivals that we do wanted to share that with you. Other reasons is, it's closest European hub from Canada, especially from, east of Canada. It's very, very accessible. And Sandra, please feel free to jump in. And I guess for all the audience, I'm just going to ask if you have any question, type it up or leave it to the end. We're going to come back to make sure that we answer all of your questions. The other thing that's special when it comes to Ireland and the relationship with Canada, it runs very deep. 4.5 million Canadians claim their Irish ancestry, and that's about 15% of the Canadian population. And 6 of Canada's 22 prime ministers have Irish heritages. And again, the oldest St. Patrick's Day in Canada takes place in Montreal, and it's been running since 1824. For those of you who are in Toronto, I encourage you that, or even next time you're in Toronto, make sure that, one of the interesting, it's shown in this picture, but it goes back to some statues of the Great Famine that happened in Ireland, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But you could see some of those statues not too far from the harbor area and the downtown area. So Google that, for that, Irish famine statues. And next time that you're in Toronto, or even if you're in Toronto, next time go and take a look at those. Again, castles, gardens, and unique luxury. I briefly talked about some of those luxury accommodations and those castles that I think second to that maybe and what's happening in Scotland. And I can't think about anywhere else that you could have that much of a castle stay. Maybe a little bit of a Loire Valley in France, but that would be it. And the fact that if you are into golf, this is the place for you to go and enjoy those sceneries. Ireland is home to 1/4 of the world's golf links courses, and it's really, really important and interesting thing to do. And if you're not really into golf, you can still go into the pub area and have a great time.
We call that the 19th hole in Ireland. So there's 18 holes for golf, and there's a 19th hole for the pub experience after.
Excellent, excellent. So before diving in some interesting things about Ireland, the language is English. There are 2 currencies in Ireland, Euro and British pounds. It's no border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. And the same as a lot of other, UK countries, the driving is happening on the left side of the street, the left side of the road, which makes it a little bit more complicated for us people in North America and I guess the rest of Europe to drive. And in terms of, automatic and manual car, my recommendation is always make sure that you do your car rental if you're doing the car rental in advance, because, the same thing with a lot of different destinations in Europe, those rental cars are mainly manual and they may not have those automatic cars ready. Again, no visa is required for Canadians. And moving forward into talking about the best time to go. So Ireland is an all-year destination, but so the peak season is from June through early September, but because it's the days are so long, the daylight starts from 4:30 a.m. till about 10:30 p.m. So really, really long days. And Dublin is as far north as Edmonton, Canada. And so during the summertime, there is so much daylight happening. But again, summer comes with more crowds. Some cruise ships are coming there as well. And that's why that it makes it a little bit more crowded. In terms of the shoulder season, which is April through May, plus late September through October, that would be a great time too, because that's, less competition for hotels, less tourists, less fun. And Sandra and I were actually talking about what's our favorite time. And Sandra, I don't know if you want to jump in, but Sandra was saying that her favorite time is fall. And we're going to talk about some of the festivals. So if you're into any of those festivals, it's critical to know when you wanted to go to Ireland. Sandra, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we were chatting about this yesterday, Leila, and I love fall. I love fall anywhere in the world, but something special about fall in Ireland because it's such a green country. So when it goes into that, it's like being in Algonquin Park in Ontario, right? Like when you go into that fall time, the colors that you see in Ireland are just absolutely amazing. Like some of my best photographs are from fall time. But then it is festival season too. So we're a year-round festival. You'll never be short of things to do when you go to Ireland. You don't have to go in the peak season to find a festival or an event going on. There's something happening all year round. But some of my favorite ones, and we'll chat about them a bit later, like Halloween, happen in October, obviously, and it's like a week or 2 week long festival in October. And then we also have a 3-month-long food festival. So the food is so good in Ireland that we have to extend our food festival for 3 entire months. It starts in September. Kind of kicks off with the Galway Oyster Festival. We're known for our seafood. Galway is the home of that, the heart of that. So that's a really, really great week-long festival. And then it extends right to the end of November. So just last year was our inaugural Taste the Island Food Festival. It was the first one we've ever done. And we started off with 300 events over those 3 months. And by the time November came around, we got to 680, I believe, events happening in those 3 months. So that shows you how much is going on in Ireland around that time.
And even wintertime in Ireland is mild, so you could have a great time there. And you know, Christmas time is also lovely in Ireland. But again, we're going to talk about some of those festivals. And again, we'll leave it to you to figure out when would be the best time for you based on your preferences and what you wanted to see. But now Sandra wants to talk about a little bit about history of Ireland timeline.
Okay, so I am no historian. I will say that straight off the bat. So I don't know the exact dates and details, but we do have 5,000 years of history in Ireland, which is just really spectacular. We're a very ancient and old country, just full of culture. So it started off with the Vikings, I guess. There's a lot of Viking history in Ireland when they arrived. They started in Waterford. So Waterford is the oldest city in Ireland. And then they also, just that whole east coast of Ireland has a lot of Viking history and heritage. And there is a lot of remains of that can be seen to this day. So even when you are walking around Dublin city, there's the remains of old Viking walls. You wouldn't know them, they're only small, you wouldn't be able to see them, you wouldn't spot them out, you think they're nothing, but you can actually go and look and see the underground of that. It's amazing. There's a attraction in Dublin city called Dublinia, and it's really interactive, fun attraction to go to, and it just walks you through that Viking history. It's spectacular. And then in Waterford, there's a whole area known as the Viking Triangle that speaks to that as well. Then another big time in Ireland was the Neolithic period. And that's when monuments like Newgrange that you might have heard of, that's when they were made. So what Newgrange is, and again, we can talk about it later, but it's an old Neolithic monument that was, they think, a passage tomb, an underground burial tomb. And it dates way back to before the pyramids of Giza. So a lot of people are really shocked to hear that we have monuments that old in Ireland. But yeah, older than the pyramids of Giza, older than Stonehenge. So a lot of history there. There are amazing museums in Dublin City that can speak to all of this and show you all those monuments. And the really great thing about museums in Ireland is that they are completely free. So one of the very few cities, I think, in the world, or countries in the world, that most of those cultural and educational centers are completely free of charge, and they're open really long hours as well. So you can kind of just dip in and out of them because there's quite a lot to take in for those type of things. You know, Museum of Natural History, for example, there's a lot to take in there. So you can just dip in and out of those and all our art galleries, just as you please. And then, of course, we have our much more modern history that I'm sure you're all semi-aware of, and Leila mentioned our 2 currencies, and that stems from that, the fact that we have the Republic of Ireland, and then we do have 6 counties in Northern Ireland as well, that stems from our recent political history. So in 1922, Ireland became bi-state, so we have the Republic of Ireland, and then we have our 6 counties in the north. It's all very peaceful now, and we have no border. But there are a lot of, great historical stories associated to that and how we fought for our independence that we can chat through a bit later, and how you can explore that when you are in Ireland.
Excellent. So now let's dig into some of the most popular festivals that you need to know.
Yeah, I'm a festival girl, so this is one of my favorites. I don't know if any of you recognize the girls or the people in this mural. Leila, have you watched the show?
I haven't, but this is the Dairy something, the Dairy.
Dairy Girls, yeah. So Dairy Girls is on Netflix. If any of you haven't watched it, I highly recommend you check it out. So it's on Canadian Netflix. It is such Irish humor. It really kind of gives a sense of the Irish personality and our sense of humor, which we're quite known for, I think. And I was surprised that it translated so well to my Canadian friends. But all my Canadian friends think it's hilarious too. So we have a lot in common humor-wise, I think. Maybe it's all those ancestral connections, but it's a great show. And this is the mural in the heart of Derry City that was painted to commemorate that. And they made them into Halloween characters because Derry is the heart of Halloween. It's where our oldest Halloween festival takes place. So Halloween dates right back to the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain. It's over 3,000 years old, and it was a harvest festival. So it was to mark the end of fall, the beginning of winter. And lots of the traditions that I suppose we know now in North America stemmed from that. So, for example, we used to carve turnips instead of pumpkins. And it was only in the 1800s when so many Irish emigrated after the Great Famine to North America that turnips weren't as readily available. So we started using pumpkins instead. And it was actually just a couple of years ago I decided to see how my ancestors would have done it and tried to carve a jack-o'-lantern into a turnip, and it was an awful experience. How I still have my 10 fingers, I do not know. And so I'm very glad that we did move to the pumpkin. It's a lot easier to deal with. And then the whole tradition of trick-or-treating or dressing up in costume, that also came from Ireland and from Halloween, because we used to dress up in costume to ward off evil spirits from our crop. Again, going back to it being a harvest festival. So that's where that originally came from 3,000 years ago. And then I don't know if any of you know what this pictured here is. I think we have a polling question that we can check maybe. If you want to launch one of the polling questions.
Yes. Let me find it.
Quiz time. Quite a traditional Irish food. We have it always at Halloween time. Oh, that's a different one, I think.
Oh no, sorry, that was a different one.
No worries. I'll chat through it anyway. But what this is barmbrack, often shortened to just brack. And what you do is you soak sultanas, and it's like a bread or a cake batter, and you soak sultanas and raisins in tea or in whiskey, either overnight or a lot of family recipes. They vary by family to family. It's quite a traditional thing. Some families would steep their sultanas and raisins in tea and whiskey for nearly a month before making this cake, so you get it really flavorful. And the tradition here was you would hide different trinkets into your barmbrack. So one of the trinkets that you would put in is a coin, and you would put in a little piece of cloth. You would put in a ring, and you would put in a thimble. And every member of the family, or whoever came to the Halloween gathering festival, would have to have a slice of this cake. And depending on what you got in your slice of cake would determine your future or your outlook for that year or for the rest of your life sometimes. So if you got the coin, you were going to be rich. If you got the little piece of cloth, it meant that you were going to stay poor. If you got the ring, you were getting married very soon. And if you were very unfortunate and got the thimble, it meant that you were going to be a spinster for the foreseeable future. So no one wanted to get that cloth or that thimble. Families still do this today.
Okay, moving on. So I think a lot of you are familiar with the St. Patrick's Day, but I wanted to just share a few facts that you may not know. What's the significance of St. Patrick's Day? So why March 17 to begin with? Well, it was the date that marks the saint's death, but you know, he had established his first church in a small and simple barn, and then you know, that was basically how then he got famous after that. But again, for those who celebrate its intended meaning, St. Patrick's Day is a traditional day for spiritual renewal. And another interesting thing that, you know, the first parade, interestingly, was not held in Ireland at all, but it was in Boston, United States around, you know, 1700, and then it was followed by another parade in New York, and then A little further, Ireland realized that, you know, that they had their first parade in Waterford in 1900-ish. But again, it was so interesting that the St. Patrick's Parade actually did not start in Ireland. The other interesting fact is actually St. Patrick wasn't Irish. He was born in he was not born in Ireland. He was thought to have originally come from either Wales or Scotland, and where he was abducted and brought to Northern Ireland as a slave. And then he was like herding the sheeps then, and you know, the rest is the story. The other you know, fact about Ireland, and Sandra, I don't know if you could speak to that, but the one of the things that it's said to be true about Ireland is that there is no snakes, and the tradition has that the reason there are no snake in Ireland is because this St. Patrick chased them into the sea. And so it's sort of like one of the good stories that Irish people say, and it's so interesting. But I don't know really how much truth there is into that. And back
There's
in
a saying in Ireland, Leila, that never let the truth get in the way of a good story, and I think that's definitely one of those.
For sure, for sure. And again, one of the things about St. Patrick's Day is like, why do people wear green? So green is a color that now is synonymous with St. Patrick's Day, and for a lot of people all over the world. But the wearing of green only became a tradition in the 19th century, and up until that, it seems like the St. Patrick's was actually blue, and all the signs were blue. So you know, it's another thing that kind of like came up as a, you know, as part of the history, it's kind of like along the way. So now let's talk about some of the fun facts about food.
So there's a ton here. You can read these guides. Is that we produce enough milk to feed 52 million people. So I think the last time we looked at it, it was about 3.5 Olympic-sized swimming pools a week or something like that. Like, it's an insane amount of dairy and milk that we produce. And we're really known for our dairy in Ireland, and there's a good reason for that. So one of the reasons is that our cows, because we have such a mild and moderate climate, that our cows are fed grass-fed year-round, which is very, very unusual in agriculture. And there's beta carotene in the grass, and that gives the dairy that really rich and yellow color, and also a really deep, rich flavor. So the genuine reason why our dairy and our butter tastes completely different, and it's the one thing that I really, really miss here in Canada. And the butter fat percentage of Irish butter is much higher, which means that it's less water and it's just more rich. Probably not very good for you, but it is delicious, so I really don't mind. We have a lot of traditional food. We're known for, you know, our hearty, heavy food, but a lot of people are really pleasantly surprised. And so one thing we hear, and any of you who have been, I think you can probably agree with me here, like write in the comments, let me know what you think and what you thought of the food when you were in Ireland. But we constantly get feedback that people are so pleasantly surprised. And we actually recently, for those of you who watch Canadian TV and might know TV host Tommy Smythe, we had an event with Tommy on Monday, and we were chatting to him. He's been to Ireland 3 times now, and we were chatting to him about what surprised him most. And, you know, lo and behold, it was again the food. And that was particularly interesting to me because Tommy is vegan. So I think people do not think of Ireland and think of vegan food. He was saying that he found it absolutely spectacular, and all over the country he had so many options, and the food was so good. And that's what my experience is all the time. We're also known for our seafood. So we are an island, which means that we are surrounded by water. So obviously the seafood is incredible. You know, Atlantic salmon is known the world over, and Irish oysters as well are very, very welcome.
Excellent. So before we jump in any further, we wanted to actually test some of your knowledge around Ireland. So I am going to launch the polls, and the questions are,
so first one, what is the name of the traditional Irish dish pictured on the left? That's that stack of what kind of looks like pancakes. So yeah, I think you can just vote there. You can just click on any of the options. So the options are called Panem, boxty, badge bread, or blah. All four of those are very traditional Irish foods. They are still eaten today all over the country, and very, very traditional. And you'll get them in pretty much any Irish restaurant or hotel. And some of them are quite region specific too, but I won't tell you about that yet until you guys vote. And then we do have a lot of, as I said, we're known for kind of spinning a yarn or telling stories. And there is a reason why Irish soda bread loaves have a cross across the top of them. So just curious if you guys know why that is too. Can I vote? Can we vote there?
We're just going to give it another maybe 40 seconds, and then we're going to close the poll. But the questions are, what's the name of the traditional Irish dish pictured on the left? Can you guess why Irish soda bread loaves have a cross across the top? What is the oldest city in Ireland, which is something that we're going to talk about it more, but Sandra did mention it at the very beginning. And then how many whiskey distilleries are there on the island of Ireland? Which again, we're going to talk about whiskey a lot. We can't be traveling to Ireland and not talking about whiskey. And what city or town in Ireland do rock legend U2 hail from? Okay, so I am going to end the polling.
Oh, interesting. It's a draw between 3 of the Irish dishes. That's fascinating. Do you want to me to talk through the answers, Leila?
Yes, please.
Okay, awesome. So the name of the traditional Irish dish pictured on the left. So funny that there's such an equal split. I've never seen that before. Colcannon is actually on the top right. So that's a Irish mash champ type dish. Boxty is the correct answer. So that's like a potato pancake. It's made with grated and mashed potato. And you can have savory versions. You can have it with meat or with seafood or just on its own. It's one of my favorite things ever. Badge bread is a potato bread that comes from Northern Ireland. And then blah is a similar type of dish, and that comes from Waterford. So if you're from Waterford, you'd eat blah very regularly. And the Irish soda bread loaves, I probably gave that away by saying we're known to spin a story or two, because the reason for that, we always say at home, is to let the fairies out. So it's kind of bad luck if you make a soda bread and you don't cross the top. I'm sure it does have a reason. I'm sure, maybe makes it aerate or something, but no Irish person would ever give you that reason. They would always say to let the fairies out. The oldest city in Ireland does stem way back to our Viking heritage, and it is Waterford. So Galway is, I see a lot of you voted for Galway. Galway is a very rustic and old country type town. It is a city, it's designated as a city, but it does have that very old towny kind of vibe. It's very small and quaint, but Waterford is older and was designated as Ireland's first city. And then with whiskey distilleries, so across the island of Ireland, so including Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, there are 31 whiskey distilleries. And 17 of those distilleries actually have visitor centres. They have the opportunity for you to go in and explore how the spirit is made and tell the story behind the whiskey. And in Dublin's Liberties area, that really is the heart of Irish whiskey. It's where the first distilleries were in the country, and where now there is a very big resurgence over the last only 3 or 4 years, a massive resurgence in that Liberties area of Dublin. So distilleries like Pierce Lyons or Teeling, which you can get in Canada, you can get them in the LCBO anyway, and I'm pretty sure nationwide, but they stem from the Liberties area of Dublin. And what city or town in Ireland do rock legends U2 hail from? So from my very own town, which you all got right, or a lot of you got right, it's Dublin.
All right.
Yeah, so I was chatting about how old the country is, and also our food history and heritage. And I wanted to call out the Cada Fields in County Mayo. And the reason for that is that it is the first example of farming. globally. So in the Cage of Fields, over 5,000 years ago, it's the first evidence of people keeping animals in enclosed areas and farming agriculturally. So they've now made this into a visitor center. It's a UNESCO Neolithic heritage site. It's a really cool place to go. And even if you're not, an agriculture nerd, it's a really, really great place to go. There's a lot of old monuments and structures there. And it also goes into the history of Ireland and Irish spiritual beliefs and those beliefs around food and around our culture. So it's just one of those hidden gems that not many people know about. But I always like to call out because I was really pleasantly surprised a few times that I've been there. It's a really, really cool location right on the west coast in County Mayo.
And one of the things that we're doing in this presentation is not only talking about the highlights of Ireland, we are also sharing some of those hidden gems that not too many people know, or some of only locals would know. So pay attention to those hidden gems, but I'll make sure that you get that as part of our newsletters on Saturday. I think Sandra, you can speak to this one because this one actually has a video, but I don't think we have a lot of time.
Okay, cool. I'll speak to it quickly, but just you already kind of chat through our heritage and our Canadian connection. So a lot of people before they want to go to Ireland, and I see even Laura said that she's half Irish and her mom's from Dublin, right? That's awesome. And so you might want to trace that family history if you don't know your history. A lot of people want to trace it in advance and then go and be able to explore those sites of where their ancestors came from or their family came from. So a couple of quick resources is ireland.com, which is our website, but it has a whole genealogy resources section that tells you where you can search those records. And it's very easy to do from Canada. Also, when you're in Ireland, there is EPIC, which is the Irish Emigration Museum. It's a fascinating place. It's the world's first fully digital museum. You can spend hours there. It's really interactive. And they have an ancestry expert there who will spend time with you and help you trace your family tree while you're in Ireland, and then talk you through the power of the name and what the history of your name is and the global impact of the Irish if you do have Irish heritage. So it's really a must not miss. It was voted the European best attraction in Europe. I was going to say in the world. It nearly got the world one, but it won the European one. And when we were chatting about Canadian connections, I always like to talk about this. So a big part of Irish culture is the Gaelic Games. The Gaelic Games is one of the world's only amateur sports that is played full time. It's a huge deal, but it's a completely amateur sport. So most of the players here who play hurling, Gaelic football, or camogie would still have full-time jobs, for example, but it's a huge deal in Ireland. And there's a fun documentary called Puck na Gael, or Puck of the Irish. So that documentary claims that when the Irish came over to Canada, and to Montreal specifically, that they took their hurls with them, and a hurl looks quite like a hockey stick, except it has a soft end versus a long end, and you can see it pictured there. So the documentary claims that when we came to Montreal, we started playing hurling, but playing it on the ice because, it's Canada, it's Montreal, and it's winter. So that is what originally created hockey. Now, it's a pretty bold claim. I don't know if I want to stand over it completely. I think my Canadian friends would murder me. But there is actually a lot of history and a lot of connection between the two sports, which I found really fascinating. So you can find that documentary on YouTube. It is in Gaeilge, in the Irish language, but it has English subtitles, so check it out.
And is that why? Because I know there was in Ireland they didn't want it to take on the cricket, which was the British main kind of like game, and they wanted to adopt something new and build something Irish way. And is that part of the reason that this was created?
Kind of. Well, the Gaelic Games go way further back, way before cricket. But yeah, the cricket never really took hold as an Irish sport. Trinity College, for example, in the heart of Dublin, was a British college initially, and they play a lot of cricket, for example, and rugby, which is quite a British sport as well. They play a lot of rugby in Ireland, but nothing in Ireland will ever beat the Gaelic Games. So it's huge. The All-Ireland final, for example, is held in Croke Park in Dublin every year, and there's 82,000 people at that. People are fighting for tickets. It's sold out every year, months and months in advance. It's a really, really huge deal. And the great thing about the Gaelic Games is that if you are born in a county, that is your county for life. There is no, born in Dublin and supporting Galway. That just does not happen. you are a solid Dublin supporter for the rest of your life. And it's a very community-bred sport.
Excellent. So now, before we really go into exploring Ireland further, I just wanted to bring you up to speed as to what's the current situation as when it comes to, you know, COVID in Ireland. I guess the positive thing, and Sandra, correct me if I'm wrong, the Prime Minister of Ireland is, you know, his profession back before was he's a medical doctor, and I guess he was able to manage the country really well. So the situation is really under control. And again, because there's so much nature and less contact to begin with, I think it was one of the countries that didn't have so much damage as part of COVID. But the dates are, you know, the opening for hospitality sector, which is hotels and things like that. It's later in June, so June 29. July 20th is when they're planning to have the events and gatherings again back up. There is an Air Canada flight that now we are hoping that it will resume as of July 2nd back to Dublin. And what happened in a lot of European countries, there was 2 weeks quarantine for arrival to that destination. And that was the case for Ireland as well. But then the next review is going to happen on June 18th. So depending on what the situation is, they may lift that out, and they may fully open it up for no quarantine for arrivals. All right, so let's now talk about Ireland's touring routes. So there are 3 main areas that we're going to walk you through. And obviously, you know, this is Dublin, and there are some other, you know, Belfast, and there are some other international airports as well. But what we're going to do, we're going to tell you the stories or the highlights of some of those main regions of the island. So we're going to start off with Dublin, and then we're going through this path, which is called Ireland's Ancient East, after we talk about Dublin. And then we're going to explore the Wild Atlantic Way, which again, it was the longest, you know, drive coastal in Europe, and in fact, I think in the world. And then we're going to explore the Northern Ireland. So stay tuned for that part. But Sandra, take us to Dublin, to your hometown.
Yeah, so this is the heart of Ireland. This is Dublin. Ballyochlia is what it's called in Gaeilge, in the Irish language. And this is a picture of the Halfpenny Bridge right in the center of the city. The city is divided into 2 halves, essentially, the north side and the south side. And this bridge unites the two. And it is known as a city of bridges. So there's bridges all along this river called the River Liffey. The river itself is beautiful. You can kayak down it, so it's really cool to be able to kayak right in the middle of the city and see everybody walking above the bridges in front of you. And right on the left side of that picture, so on the south side of the bridge, is the Temple Bar area that you probably have heard of. Temple Bar is really the heart of Irish nightlife, or definitely Dublin nightlife. It is quite a touristic area, so you know there's a lot of traditional music. The bars are popping every single night, and it's a really fun place to check out. I would always say that people should definitely take a trip or a walk through Temple Bar, but some of the side streets off it are where I would recommend that you go. So again, those hidden gems. Walk through Temple Bar, have a pint of Guinness in one of the bars, but then take a trip just 2 minutes outside of that area, and you'll find those real local little spots that the locals will go to. And the cool thing about the Halfpenny Bridge, and why it's called the Halfpenny Bridge, is that way back when you used to have to pay a halfpenny to cross it. Obviously they don't tax you crossing the bridge anymore, but it was a taxation, and that's what the name of the bridge was after. The GPO in Dublin is on the north side of the city. This is a very historic site. I talked briefly about our independence as a republic, and so this is really where the heart of that happened, is at the GPO. So it's the site of the 1916 Rising, so you can actually still see bullet holes in the columns here on the GPO in Dublin, which really kind of speaks to its history. It's a fantastic building in itself. It's beautiful. They do have like a history type museum, like a political history museum in this now, which speaks to the history of it. But it's where members of the Irish Volunteers seized the building on the Easter Monday of 1916, which is known as the Easter Rising, which is probably one of the most poignant political and historical events in Ireland. And it's where Padraig Pearse, who was kind of a leader of that Irish Revolution of the Republic, read the proclamation of independence for Ireland on the steps of this building. So it's a really significant place. This is epic. This is the museum that I mentioned earlier. So you can see Justin Trudeau himself, who has some Irish heritage there. He visited a year or two ago. And as I said, it really just speaks to the global impact of the Irish. We are, all over the world. 15% of Canadians have Irish heritage, but we are all over the world. And that's because we do have quite a checkered past. With the famine in particular in the 1840s. So many of us were forced to emigrate. And it's quite a sad story, but I like to think that we have made a very positive impact around the world. And this museum really speaks to that and the achievements of the Irish and the heritage and the stories behind that. There's some really phenomenal stories in this museum. As I said, first fully digital museum too. So lots of photo ops and lots of fun things you can really, touch and feel and see, which is great.
I always say that if you wanted to discover why like 10 million people left Ireland and the impact they had on the world, that's the place you want it to be. And I love those immigration museums because they tell a lot of stories. So like an absolute must when you go to Dublin.
Yeah, for sure. And you pointed out the statues in Toronto there. And yes. So they're in Ireland Park in Toronto, and they mirror the famine memorial statues right in front of that building. So it's really cool to see them facing each other. And yeah, when you're in Dublin, it's the heart of Irish whiskey, as I mentioned earlier, and it is, of course, the home of Guinness. So the Guinness Storehouse is the most visited tourist attraction in Ireland. And it's a phenomenal museum. It really is. The inside of the building is shaped like a pint glass. So architecturally, it's just phenomenal. And they have this on the bottom right, you can see it there. It's called the Gravity Bar. They recently doubled it in capacity, which is great. But at the end of your experience there, which usually takes about 2 hours, you can sit and have a pint and look over the skyline of Dublin, which is just so beautiful. It's really, really nice up there. And there's a fun fact about this building is that Arthur Guinness signed the original lease to this building at St. James's Gate in the heart of Dublin in 1759. And he signed it for £45 a year, and it was a 9,000-year lease. So they are still paying £45 for their lease here in the heart of Dublin City. So I don't think St. James's Gate or this location is going anywhere anytime soon, because no one can get rent prices like that. And they have a copy in the museum itself. They actually have a copy of that lease agreement in the glass door that you can see. So it's not even one of those stories that we tell. It's legit. I'm also a big gin fan. I don't know about you guys, but as much as I love my Irish whiskey, I love my gin even more. And Ireland is going through a little bit of a gin revolution at the moment. I actually have a bottle of Shortcross right here to show you guys. You can get this here in Canada. This is Shortcross gin. It's from Northern Ireland. And Glendalough there, pictured on the right, is from County Wicklow, and they infuse it with a lot of amazing botanicals. So no bottle is the same because they infuse it differently every time, depending on what they forage in County Wicklow at that given time when they're creating it. In the middle there is Listoke Gin Distillery School. So this is a visitor experience that you can do about 40 minutes north of Dublin Drive. You can go to this gin distillery school, and they will let you infuse your own gin and make your own gin on the spot with different ingredients. And on the left there is Bertha's Revenge. So it's made with sheep's milk. So it's gin made with sheep's milk, and it is surprisingly delicious. I wouldn't have thought it, but I definitely recommend giving it a try if you're in Ireland. And then we have, so I think every country, right, has their own illegal spirit. You know, you have grappa and you have tequila and you have all these traditional spirits. Ours is poitín, so it's our original craft spirit. It was, you know, made originally way back when. The name comes after the copper pot stills, so pota, after poitín, and that means the pot that they used to brew it in, which was a copper pot still way back when. It was outlawed for many, many, many years. So it was made illegal. In 1997, though, it became regulated. Now you can buy and consume poitín. It's really, really nice. Teeling Distillery do a really good one. That distillery I mentioned earlier, or Missile from Galway. I have a bottle of that here too. They do some really, really great poitíns, and it's a nice original craft. You wouldn't drink a lot of it, but it's still good with a soda.
I guess the other interesting thing for me for Ireland is I think I can read it, but then I realize I can't. You think it's written in English, but then it's not.
It's a tricky language.
We have some like Gaelic stuff for you guys as well.
So yeah, I chatted about the Halfpenny Bridge earlier, so I think we've covered this, but this is the bridge that you have to spend half a penny to cross. And this is my university. So this is Trinity College Dublin. This is in the heart of Dublin. It really is a gem in Dublin's crown. And there's a fun story about the campanile here, which is right in the center of the campus. And the legend goes that if you were to cross underneath the campanile before you graduated, that you would never pass university. So you'll never catch an undergraduate or anyone who actually goes to Trinity College hanging out under there or walking through under there. Because even though you know it's probably not true, you're still not going to take the risk. I know I certainly didn't. And in the college itself is the Book of Kells, which is a very famous old manuscript. When you go to see the Book of Kells, the last room that you end up in is this room on the right, which is the Long Room Library. It's thought to have inspired a lot of Harry Potter visuals. But it's an absolutely spectacular library. It's very, very cost effective to go in there. I think it's something like €4 to see this ancient manuscript and the Long Room Library. So something that a lot of people give a miss, and they just don't think to go there when they're in Dublin, but I 100% recommend that people check it out while they're there.
And I think this library is also famous for some of the scenes in Harry Potter movie. Okay, so one of the interesting things to do in Dublin is the Irish Whiskey Museum. So this is exclusively for tourists. No Irish people really go to this place, but I guess you know what, it's part of the experience. It's housed in a historic building near the city center, and this museum is comprised of an extensive whiskey bar, historic exhibits, and tasting rooms. So it's a lot of different types of whiskey, which is interesting, and it's not sponsored by a whiskey brand, so you could go there and try different types of whiskey. Now we want to change gear a little bit and going into some Irish dance parties. So Sandra.
So yeah, one of my favorite things to do when I'm at home, and I always take any visitors that I have in town, we always make sure to go to an Irish dance party. You can do lots of different types of these. There's one that's called the Irish Dance Party. There's one that's called the Irish House Party. There is an experience that you can do in Johnny Fox's, which is a traditional pub. It's the highest pub in Ireland, and it's in the Dublin Mountains. You can go up there and you can do it there, or somewhere called a Merry Ploughboy as well. But it's basically a music and dance experience. They also have one in the Arlington Hotel. So you won't be short of opportunities to do this, but really does give you a taste of, think of yourself as a river dancer. They have lots of traditional music, lots of traditional song. By the end of it, everyone is standing on their chairs and singing and dancing, and they might even get you up on stage to do a bit of a jig or a reel too. So they teach you the traditional steps of Irish dance, and they teach you some traditional Irish songs, and it's a ton of fun. And it's something that you might think is very touristy, but me and my friends have gone a ton of times, and we're born and bred in Ireland. So yeah, it's a ton of fun.
Let's go down to History Line again.
Yeah, down the history line again. So we talked about the GPO as a core site of the 1960 Rising and our political past. Kilmainham Jail is the other side of that. It is another key site, like about that history. It's a beautiful building in itself. It's located in Kilmainham, which is probably about 15 minutes walk from the city centre, or a very short cab ride. And it is run by the Office of Public Works in Dublin. And so the special thing about this is, or really the storied thing about this is where a lot of the Irish revolutionaries who participated in the 1916 Rising were shot and executed by the British government. So it sounds very intense. It's very passionate. It's an incredible spot to go to learn a little bit more about Irish history. But it is wonderfully two-sided. It doesn't get into either side of that debate or of that conversation, and it's a really spectacular place to go just to learn a little bit more about how the modern contemporary Ireland became what it is today.
So I intentionally left the history and the tough part and then the more intense part of the presentation to Sandra, because I wanted to talk more about the food and the fun stuff. So so this is one of my favorite places and one of the most unique and beautiful bars in Dublin. And so it's called the Church Cafe and Bar. And it's, in fact, this church used to be originally called St. Mary's Church, but then it closed down in 1964, and then it eventually restored and converted into a popular bar and nightclub. So I think what makes it super interesting for me is, there is this fun, interesting island bar, but you could totally see that it has the architecture of a church, and it's so fun to dance and have fun and eat in a place that used to be a church. And then so there's resident DJs playing several nights, and it's so fun, especially for like Friday and Saturday nights.
And just what we think, talk about that actually, I forgot to mention this to you yesterday when we were chatting, there are so many places like that, right, all over the city, all over the country. Another one I can think of right now in Dublin is the Bankers Bar right off of the Trinity College, and it's housed in an old bank. And so just like that, the architecture is phenomenal. It's really cool to see that dichotomy between the two. And there's a really cool festival in January that happens every year. It's a traditional music festival called Tradfest. And what Tradfest is they open up all these venues that you never usually have access to and hold traditional Irish music concerts in them. So it's a really special experience. You only get to do it once a year, and you have to have a ticket to this concert to do it. But the tickets could be 10 or 20 euro. They're very cheap. But if you are in Ireland in January, you have to check out Tradfest.
And if you've seen, a lot of these housing complexes, because they're built and they look exactly the same. And so in order to, so most homeowners, they wanted to paint their door an original color in order to set them apart from their neighbors. And you may see this in a lot of postcards from Ireland, or a lot of pictures, or if you've been to, Dublin specifically, you will see a lot of those colorful, unique looking doors, and which makes it, super, super interesting just to walk by them. Let's talk more about the Gaelic games.
Yes, we kind of chatted about this already, I guess, but the Gaelic games are a huge part of Irish culture, and you can do it yourself when you're in Ireland. So there's a few different opportunities that you can do it. And one is called Experience Gaelic Games. So this is a centre not too far from Dublin City, 10 or so minute drive. And they let you just spend the day, and they teach you how to play the sport. So as I said earlier, there's 3 different types of Gaelic games. There's Gaelic football, which is kind of like a handball type game. There is hurling, which is played with the long stick. And then there is hurling's cousin or sibling, I suppose, which is the all-female version of hurling. And so 3 different types of games there. And you can go and just get a big group together, and they'll teach you how to play. There's lots of different skills and ways to, transfer the ball and things like that. And another one that I think we have another slide of next is the GAA Museum in Dublin. So on the left here is the rooftop or the skyline walk of the GAA Museum. So it's a museum that talks to the Gaelic games and the history of the sport, and all the famous icons associated with the sport. But if you're not that into sports and you just want a spectacular experience, it is still worth checking out. So it's held in Croke Park, which is where the All-Ireland finals, massive final game that I told you about with 82,000 people. It's in this stadium. And they open up the very top skyline walk. Again, not for the faint of heart. It is pretty high up, but the views that you get from the skyline there are fantastic. So that's just a picture that I took on a recent trip. I was actually there on the All-Ireland final. So this was shot 2 hours before the All-Ireland final. So you could see the crowds of people streaming into the stadium while I was up here. It was amazing. And just for fun, I wanted to show you my doggy. So this is Tato. Wearing my Dublin jersey. So I said that if you were a Dublin supporter, you were a Dublin supporter for life. Even though I live in Canada, that still holds true. So my Dublin jersey comes to Canada with me. And he's quite a big dog, so that is my jersey that he is wearing. Not that you could probably tell. And my dog's name is Tato, Tayto, which anyone who's been to Ireland will recognize, which is a famous brand of Irish crisps or potato chips. And one of my favorite things that Leila and I were chatting about this, what our favorite things about Ireland was, and what stands out to me about my hometown is that it's so surprising by nature, in that it is a city, but it is surrounded by amazing mountains and beautiful beaches. And I don't think anybody that I know anyway thinks of Ireland and thinks of the beach, but we have amazing beaches north and south of the city. So there is our local transit line, which is called the Dart line. It's just our local train line. You can hop on the Dart, and in 20 minutes, you are just at the most amazing beaches, promenades, cliff walks. They do water sports. Here in the middle, pictured there is Malahide Castle. So my first ever job actually was working in this castle. It's very close to where I live, 20 minutes north of Dublin City. So really ancient, an 800-year-old castle just, on Dublin's doorstep. And this is right beside the beach in Little Marine Fishing Village. And we talked about the dance party. So on the right there is Johnny Fox's. That pub is the highest pub in Ireland, and it's situated in the Dublin Mountains, just really nestled into the middle of nowhere. It's a beautiful experience. Just lots of hidden gems and just surrounded by that spectacular nature all the time. Something really special, especially now living in North America, like big cities don't always have that so close by. And the largest park in Europe is right in the heart of the city. So just, I'd say 10-minute walk from the Guinness Storehouse, which is in the heart of Dublin, is the Phoenix Park. And all year round, they have wild roaming deer. So it's a picture of them there. They're really tame. You can walk up to them. I wouldn't recommend going too close, but wild roaming deer all year round. It's the largest park in Europe. It is, I think, 3.5 times the size of Central Park. I could even be underestimating that, but it's absolutely giant. You spend hours walking around, and they have bike rental shops right at the entrance that you can just cycle around. It's a really lovely day if it's sunny out in Dublin.
I think it's larger than all of the City of London parks combined. And I know that people love to compare themselves against Brits, but I guess that's something that is interesting for this park.
Yeah. And I mentioned the walk. So near Malahide is a fishing village called Howth, Howth, right on the Dart line, right on the coast. And there's this spectacular cliff walk that you can do right around this mountain. And it's absolutely stunning. Right on the end of it is the Bailey Lighthouse, and it's very well known. It's a bit of an Irish icon. And then in the village of Howth itself is just some of the best bars and food and crack that you'll ever have. It's right on the Irish Sea, so the seafood and everything there is incredible.
Excellent. So now that we've explored Dublin and its highlights and talked about why you should be traveling and exploring that area, we're going to go and see some of the highlights of the Ireland's ancient East. And as I mentioned, so we're going down the coast and we're going around the island, and we're going to talk about all those main different regions. So Sandra?
Yeah, so Ireland's ancient East, I spoke to earlier, it has 5,000 years of history. So there's so much I could talk about here, but I won't keep you all day on a history lesson. But one of the highlights for me anyway is Newgrange. So Newgrange is about 40 minutes from Dublin. And it's a really special place because on the summer solstice, this is the ancient passage tomb I mentioned. And on the winter solstice every year, so the 21st of December, the sun shines through the roof chamber of this passage tomb. And you can go underneath and explore the inside of this passage tomb. But on the winter solstice, the sun shines through the roof box and illuminates the entire chamber inside. So it's so bizarre because it's so old that how they were able to design that, you know, it's just, it speaks so much to the knowledge that our ancestors had that we don't have today. No one knows to this day. There's lots of theories about how they were able to do this, but only on the winter solstice does that happen. And they do a really great job of recreating that at this experience. So when you go to Newgrange, you can go into those inner chambers and they will recreate the moment that the sun shines through the roof box. And it really takes you back, you know, it doesn't feel manufactured. It's so incredibly well done. And right beside this site is the two neighboring UNESCO World Heritage sites called Knowth and Dowth. And they're equally amazing in their own right. But like I said, I don't want to keep you on a history lesson here all day.
You know, that's a reason why it's called the ancient roots, after all.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, the Rock of Cashel. So this is in County Tipperary. And when you drive through Tipperary, you just see this looming over you. It really is one of our spectacular monuments. And it is the ancient seat of Ireland. So really the historic heart of ancient Ireland, where the High Kings used to sit. And it dates back way to the 4th century. And there's lots of stories about this. It's also called the Devil's Rock because there's, you know, a myth or a legend, or maybe it's true, who knows, but that St. Patrick once fought the devil on this rock, and the devil spit out a bit of the rock, and that's what created the Rock of Cashel. So there's always a story behind these monuments, I guess.
All right, so going down, again, so we're going down the coastline, and we arrived to the city of Waterford. So as Sandra earlier mentioned, it's Ireland's oldest city, and it's the main city of Southeast Ireland, and it claims to be the oldest city in the entire country. The Vikings chose to build their base here because it's located at the mouth of a series of river, which make up the largest natural navigation system within Ireland, and that's why they picked that place. And you know, the boats could go 50 miles into Ireland through the city. And there are some, you know, obviously you could see a lot of heritage, a lot of cultural things, you know, Viking things, but probably Waterford is famous for the world-renowned Waterford crystal, which is, you know, it's this the crystal factory. So it's been it's built around 1700. The factory has been crafting the most elegant crystal creation, and I guess, you know, this whole tradition goes back to, again, 1700, and lots of visitors. You could go, you could take a look, and I guess what was interesting for me was the fact that it takes, if I'm not mistaken, 8 years for a you know, just like a regular person to get trained to be and not again at like a super high level stuff, but it just takes 8 years to be trained to do some of the work for this, you know, the crystal work. And even for some of the other special pieces, the training required is about 20 years of experience. So you see a lot of these people that they've spent ton of their time in their life, and this is basically their whole career to do this. And you could go and visit this interesting place. Oops, sorry, let me go back. I jumped. So one other interesting thing that is close to Waterford, and again, going back to how much I love the whole stories of immigration and the stories behind that. So the ship on the left is a replica of the original Dombrody, which was built in Quebec, Canada in 1845. So when famine started in 1800, it took till 1840, and it was a very black period in Ireland, that you know, the potato crops went bad, and these people were all farmers. They didn't have any other profession, and they didn't know anything else to do. So there was, you know, a lot of people got starved, and they didn't know what to do, and that was the biggest, I think, immigration to US, to Canada, and all of that. And so this ship is a replica of you know, those people who, those, you know, the Irish immigrants who came over to North America. And so this ship, as they call it, it was a good ship, because there were some other ships that they're called coffin ships, and 50% of people would die. But again, they had very limited access to food, and it was so hard for them to survive. But again, you know, a lot of them, they made it to this side of the planet, and again, they put this up as a replica. And so the Dombrody is a memorial to victims of the famine in Ireland. And you know, it's a really interesting place to go and visit, and it's not too far from the city of Waterford. But now going back to a little bit of more hidden gems.
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite sites in Ireland. It's known as the Sacred Heart of Ireland. It's in County Westmeath, so in Ireland's ancient East still. It's called the Hill of Uisneach. It's a Gaeilge word, and it's really described as the Sacred Heart. So it's meant to be the burial place of a lot of ancient Irish gods. And so really it's steeped in myth and legend. There's a lot of festivals associated with this. So one of the big ones is the Bealtaine Fire Festival. So the Bealtaine Fire Festival is a festival of fire, it's in the name, but there is a lot of fire dancing, and there's a sacred lighting of the fires. And it's thought that this was the first ever fire lit in Ireland. And from this fire, all the other fires were lit. And it's kind of said to be a meeting place of, you know, the real world and the underworld in Ireland. So no one better than the guides here at this ancient site to be able to talk you through it. And they're really, really passionate. And they actually, even on Facebook at the moment, are doing an incredible job of virtually bringing people through and the experience that you can get here. Because obviously people can't travel right now, and so they're really bringing it to you guys. So I definitely recommend checking them out. Bealtaine, as I said, is the big one that happens here. But they're also known for their summer solstice experiences. So especially around this time of year, it's just a really special place in Ireland. And it's something that I suppose not many people know about or anything, which is why I wanted to talk about it. And Cork City, yeah, one of my favorite spots. There's so much to do in Cork. It's must not miss. It's on the very southern tip. Have you been to Cork before, Leila?
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's just a great place. So it's one of our big cities. It's quite an industrial city. So a lot of Irish cities are very, you know, full of character, and those cobbled streets and that kind of very quaint vibe. Cork is a little bit different, and it feels a little bit more industrial. It's kind of the industrial heart of Ireland. But there's a ton of great things to do there. It is my shopping centre. I would always go to Cork if I wanted to go shopping. The shopping there is fantastic. And yeah, they have in Cove, which is just south of Cork City itself, is where the last stop on the Titanic was. So it's a beautiful little fishing village and harbour town. And yeah, again, a really, really great place to go for seafood. But they do have a great Titanic exhibit here. So a lot of people, you know, the Belfast really is the heart of that Titanic experience. They have an amazing Titanic experience museum. But one of those, yeah, hidden gems again is that Titanic experience in Cove and Cork.
So one of the things that I wanted to mention on that about Cork was I haven't had a chance to actually visit Cork, but one of the things I had on my bucket list to when I visit to Cork is to visit the Butter Museum. And again, I think it's for us, for a lot of us living in North America, and pretty much everything is tasteless. And you know, tasting dairy and ice cream, and we are going to talk a little bit about that later on. But this is a great place to learn about the culture of butter making from, again, ancient Ireland to present day. So not to be missed when you're going to the Cork City. So recap of what we've done. So we've started Dublin. We came along this way. You know, we went to Waterford and Cork, and we visited, I think, the Rock of Cashel here. And then, but we're going up here through the Wild Atlantic Way, which is, again, the world's longest defined coastal driving route. So, so one of the things that was going to talk about, and I'll try to show it in the map, but is the Ring of Kerry. So it's let me actually go back to show. it's something here, which is like something that you could do like a circle trip in the Ring of Kerry. And am I going backwards or okay? Yes. Okay. So one of the things that you could do here is, you know, the nature varies, and it's you go from rugged coastline to charming villages and buzzing towns. And if you're a cyclist, you may want to really go cycling in this area. And it all, you know, I picked different pictures from different parts of this ring road, if you wanted to call it that way. And then you get to Dingle.
I love Dingle so much. This is one of my favorite spots in Ireland. It's amazing, and it's a huge summer place to go. So Ireland is definitely a year-round destination, but for Dingle specifically, I would definitely say make sure to go in summer if you happen to be in town at the time. And it's just the quintessential Irish town. You know, it has all those fun little quaint pubs. The friendliest locals you'll ever meet. You'll make best friends with the guy sitting beside you at the bar, whether you want to or not, I'm sure. And it's just those colorful houses and towns. So it's just a picturesque, quaint spot to go. There's a ton of nature and hikes and beautiful mountains around here. But really just the town of Dingle itself, it's very hard to quantify or explain. It's just one of those places that you have to see it to believe it and to feel it. It's a vibe more than any specific thing to do.
And I guess if I'm not mistaken, the ice cream is, I don't know if it's in the Ireland or is the most famous ice cream that you could have.
It's Murphy's. That's Murphy's ice cream in Dingle. Yeah. So its original location is in Dingle, and then you can get Murphy's all over the country now. But they even infuse their ice cream with gin sometimes. So yeah, it's pretty special.
So a little bit of talk around the Dingle Peninsula. So as we mentioned, so Dingle is the actual city, but there is a peninsula that goes around that. And National Geographic actually calls this the most beautiful place on earth. And again, it's because of you know, the whole the beauty that it has. And one of the things that I mentioned, so these are some very scenic places that in the most recent years, crew of Star Wars came to town to film parts of the Last Jedi, or you know, some other. And this is actually from Skelling Michael, where you know they filmed a lot of Star Wars there. So it's definitely one of the areas that's coming up as a movie scene.
A fun fact about the Star Wars connection and Dingle actually is, for any Star Wars fans, do you know the little porgs, the little white and orange thing? Anyone who knows Star Wars will know them. They're one of the like new icons from the new movies, but they were actually from the puffins. So all over that area of the world is all these puffins, and it was too expensive for them to edit it out. So they made a new character and called it the Porg, and it became one of the breakout characters in the new Star Wars film.
Cool, I didn't know that.
They're so cute.
The Cliff of Moher.
Yeah, so I think most people know the Cliffs of Moher, right? Like it's our icon. And it really gives you that sense that you are standing on the edge of the Atlantic, which is essentially what you're doing. Really sheer, amazing cliff drop. It's beautiful. There's a visitor center there, and you can just walk along the cliffs. It's really unspoiled. And it just really does feel like that raw, unrivaled nature. My favorite way to see it, though, is by boat. So there is a ferry company, and there's a few of them now, but one of them is called Doolin to Arran Ferries. And what they do is take you by boat right by the Cliffs of Moher and out to Ireland's Arran Islands, which are a spectacular sight in themselves. But really just the view of the Cliffs of Moher from the water is so spectacular. And it's just, if you can see it from that perspective, I really, really recommend it. It's a relatively new thing over the last couple of years that you're able to do this. But I always use Niagara Falls as that example. You know, seeing Niagara Falls, for any of you who have, from the top, it's beautiful, it's fantastic. But nothing beats seeing it from the water and just feeling the impact of that water. And when you're on the boat at the Cliffs of Moher, and you can hear the sounds better, you can see the waves rushing up against the boat. It's really exhilarating. It's amazing. I want to go back there right now that I'm talking about it. And just slightly north of that is Kylemore Abbey in County Galway. So again, one of those jewels and those icons. It's actually a Benedictine monastery from the 1800s. So it looks kind of like a castle, but it is an abbey, and it's still, the Benedictine nuns are still there. And they have kindly granted visitors access to this monastery, and there is just amazing tea rooms, an incredible walled garden that I think you've been to, Layla, right? You're a big fan of the spot.
Yeah. And I love the tea concept, and getting food in this place. So that's why I did put this tea house here.
The best scones in the world, I'm convinced of it.
For sure. And one of the things that I intentionally put it as we are getting closer to Galway, and we're going to talk about that part, is not in, I think we briefly talked about it, but there are so many other festivals happening. So Sandra, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is like the last weekend of September. So it's typically 25th, 27th till the end of September each year. And again, it's nonstop entertainment and festival and fun. And I think the World Oyster Opening Championships that happens as part of this festival. Sandra?
Oh yeah, sorry. Do you want me to speak to that? I asked.
Oh no, I was looking for a confirmation.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. As always, you're spot on.
And this is another hidden gem that Sandra wanted to talk to you about.
Yeah, so I do love my hidden gems, as you can tell, but the Connemara Heritage Centre is a short drive from Galway City, and it's one of those must not miss things, in my opinion. So there's something really special about the west coast of Ireland, and the east and west coast, even though we're a very small country. So just for reference, for scale, to drive from Dublin to Galway, just east to west, is only 3 hours. Very, very small and accessible country. But culturally, we are worlds apart sometimes. So there's something about the west coast of Ireland that is just very traditionally Irish. And the Connemara Heritage Centre really speaks to that. So it is a house of Dan O'Grady. He's a gentleman from the 1800s, and it just kind of talks about his life. And it gives you a sense of what things were like way back when in these, stone houses. And they give you a sense of, like, they make some butter there. They show you how to make scones. You can dance by the fire. They'll teach you a broom dance, which is a traditional Irish dance you do with a sweeping broom and a wooden board on the floor. So just a lot of these really old traditional experiences that people on the West Coast to this day still do. But it's just a beautiful spot, yeah.
And here we wanted to point out, one of the things that's interesting for Ireland is, first of all, Romans didn't get to Ireland. So you don't see any Roman architecture in Ireland. What happens though is you see a lot of like Gaelic regions, which I highlighted it. It's on the left-hand side, and that's where British, or when people were attacking or occupying from the left side, it remained fairly intact. And Sandra wanted to show us or teach us some words in Gaelic.
Yeah, so if anybody knows what any of these mean, before we give you the English translation, I'd love for you to write them in the chat box, because anyone who knows Irish, it just fills my heart with joy. But in Ireland, we learn the Irish language in primary school and in secondary school. So it is an obligatory English, Irish, and math are the three things that in Ireland you have to learn when you go to school. So it is not widely spoken across the country. It's really in those areas that Layla just highlighted. But we do know Irish. So Fáilte is the first word. Céad Míle Fáilte is the second. Sláinte is the third. And Gurb Maithaghat is the fourth. So I see a couple of people answering there. So second one is 100,000 welcomes, which is spot on, Laura. And third one is to your health. So yeah, to your health, good health, or cheers. So Fáilte, the word Fáilte means welcome. Saying in Ireland when you arrive on our shores, and you will see a lot of signage saying this when you arrive in Ireland, and above Irish bars, all this type of thing, is Céad Míle Fáilte. and it means 100,000 welcomes. And I think that really speaks to the Irish sense of hospitality, because one welcome is just not enough. Two welcomes is just not enough. We have to give you 100,000 of them. I think that really comes across when you meet Irish people, or at least I certainly hope it does. I see Laura nodding there, so that makes me happy. And then when you raise a glass, I think every culture and every language has a word for this. Ours is sláinte, so when you raise a glass, it is to good health, and it just translates really naturally as cheers. But the direct translation is to good health. And my favorite one always is Gurb Mahagut, or Gurb Mila Mahagut. And we are, as Irish people, as you've probably realized listening to me tonight, that we talk a lot and we use a lot of words to say not a lot sometimes, which is why we take 4 words to say thanks. So we'll say Gurb Mahagut or Gurb Mila Mahagut, which means thanks a million. Yeah, so that's just a little quick Irish lesson for anyone who does like Irish or want to learn a little bit more before they go. There is a free Irish course on Duolingo, so that little green owl there will teach you some Irish must-haves before you go.
Cool.
And yeah, we were talking about film and TV. So I mentioned Dairy Girls, and we were talking about Star Wars and Game of Thrones. But something I wanted to highlight is Normal People. I don't know if any of you have heard of this yet. It's really new. It's adapted from Sally Rooney's very famous novel, and it's a best-selling novel. And it's now, just as of last week or the week before, airing on CBC Gem. So check it out. It's a little raunchy at times. There's been jokes that it's, you know, called 50 Shades of Sligo, but it's a great story. It really is a very heartwarming story. And it starts in Dublin, in Trinity College. They're going to university there, and then it goes to the west coast of Ireland in the Wild Atlantic Way, where we're doing our virtual tour in Sligo. So just if you want to get a sense of true Ireland, you can watch that show.
So one of the things I have done in one of my newsletters to my audience is highlighting some of the movies to watch while we can travel. So that would be another good item to go on my list.
It's a fun one for sure. And yeah, we were talking about the Cliffs of Moher, those spectacular cliffs, but slightly north of Galway. So we're now in County Donegal. This is Slieve League. And Slieve League is the tallest sea cliffs in Europe, and it is 3 times higher than the Cliffs of Moher. So somehow the Cliffs of Moher became this Irish icon, and they are incredible. But to me, Slieve League is that hidden gem. It's that slightly better than the Cliffs of Moher. It's a really amazing experience. It's so wild up there. You can hike right on the edge of this cliff edge. And yeah, just the sheer size of these cliff faces is incredible. And this is, we talked about emigration a lot, and this is Fanad Lighthouse in County Donegal. This would have been the last, on the very northwest tip of the country. So as people were leaving Ireland, whether it was for famine or whatever reason they were leaving for, this would have been one of the very last things that they saw on their departure. And Fanad Lighthouse has now opened up to self-catering accommodation. So you can actually stay in a lighthouse, which is pretty cool in itself, but it's a pretty special place for Irish people anyway, just because of its location. So they have, I think, 3 self-catering cottages there, sleeping between 2 and 8 people.
So now we are going to go to north of Ireland. So again, we've gone, almost full circle, and now we are coming to the Northern Ireland, and we're going to explore that part of it.
Northern Ireland is one of my favorite places to go, and I love it so much. And the crazy thing is, when I lived in Ireland, so for most of my life, I didn't actually go to Northern Ireland a lot. It was a 2-hour drive from Dublin, and I just never really thought about it. And my partner was actually working in Belfast, and I decided to take a drive up, and my mind was blown. It is so spectacularly beautiful. The Causeway Coast, for example, was voted the #1 region in Lonely Planet's Best in Travel in 2018, and there's no doubt why. And a really great thing that they're doing in Northern Ireland at the moment is this new brand called Embrace a Giant Spirit. And it's something that anyone interested in traveling to Ireland should deal with a travel designer, right? You need to work with somebody like Leila, because only travel advisors and designers can book these experiences. So there's 23 signature experiences available in Northern Ireland at the moment, and that have to be booked through your travel designer. They're very exclusive and unique, and that certainly doesn't mean expensive, right? So they're very cost effective, but they're just they're very off the beaten track and a little bit special and a little bit new. And so I'll chat through a couple of them just as we go around. So the first that you'll come to if you're outfitting the Wild Atlantic Way, the first thing that you'll come to is the city of Derry, Londonderry. It's an incredible city. It's full of political history, and it's also the only remaining fully walled city in Europe. So it's surrounded by these incredible walls that you can walk along, and they do incredible guided tours of that. There's a guy called Rory O'Hara, for example, who does a spectacular job of taking you through around these walls and pointing out all the key sites, like the Guildhall, which is behind you there. But when you book it through somebody like Layla, you can get access to unlocking the walled city, which means you get to tick off all the key experiences. And at the end of this experience, you get a key to say that only you have unlocked the walled city. So it really just gives you a taste of all the highlights available there. And Derry, as I said, is the heart of Halloween. So this is where the massive Derry Halloween Festival takes place every year. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was 120,000 people went in 2019 for that festival.
It's the largest Halloween party in the world, and in Europe, in fact, too.
And again, like New York Times, Lonely Planet, everyone has voted it the best place to spend Halloween in the world. So it really is, like, it's not just me saying it, it's not just Layla saying it, it's an incredible spot to go for Halloween. It's a must not miss. Not sure what that'll look like this year, but we hope to get back to that as soon as possible. And I know they will be offering this year a lot of virtual experiences. So like Puka, like Bram Stoker, like all those Halloween festivals that we have on the island, they will be doing virtual elements this year. So you can get a taste of it before you go for the next one. And again, this is my my Derry Girls 4-year-old. Ireland.
This is one of my favorite things, for sure.
Derry Girl?
No, the sheepdogs.
So much fun. So you can do this a few different places across the island. One of my personal favorites is at Glen Shane. So this is a family man. He lives on this farm with his wife and his 2 daughters, who will do a little bit of Irish dancing for you if you go to this experience. And you can see the sheepdogs at work. These beautiful sheepdogs. They live on this incredible farm in Northern Ireland with a mountain view in the background. Like, it's the best property I've ever been to. It's stunning. And the sheepdogs will show you how they do their sheepdog trials. So they'll round up all the sheep, and they can do like lots of different things, but it's not tricky. It's not manufactured. These are real working sheepdogs. And this is a real working family. And they will teach you how to shear a sheep. So he will demonstrate, this is Jamesy here. Jamesy will demonstrate how to shear a sheep, and you can actually go up and he will walk you through how to do it yourself. So really, really hands-on experience. But it's fantastic, and it really does show a history of Ireland. And, you know, sheep farming, for example, is a huge part of our economy today. So he'll walk you through that. And they also keep a lot of rare sheep breeds there. So Jamesy and a lot of the Irish farmers in Northern Ireland and across the Wild Atlantic Way work together to make sure that these ancient breeds stay alive. So they don't have any value at the moment. You know, their wool isn't worth anything, and their meat isn't worth anything. But the farmers just really want to keep that sense of history alive, and they work together to keep these ancient breeds, and they'll be able to show you the different breeds of sheep that you won't be able to find anywhere else.
Yeah, and this is exactly one of those things, which is what keeps me super excited about those authentic, unique, local experiences off the beaten path. That only through like either advisors or people who know this country or local expert would be able to give you that information.
One of the icons in Northern Ireland, I don't know who has heard of it, but it's the Giant's Causeway. So again, lots of myth and legend behind this site. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's run by the National Trust. It's a beautiful spot. But something really special that the Northern Ireland Embrace the Giant Spirit brand are doing is they're bringing Bushmills Distillery, which is a whiskey distillery in Northern Ireland, together with this site. So I always joke and say, what do you get when you cross geology with whiskey? You get whiskey on the rocks. So Whiskey on the Rocks is where you get a guided tour from the guys at Bushmills Distillery on the Giant's Causeway after hours. So when there's no one else there. And like, I think we've all been to those tourist sites that they're beautiful because so many people, and you just want to be able to see it and have it to yourself. And this is what this experience offers. It offers you that just behind the scenes view when no one else is around with the experts. So they get a guide from the National Trust, and they get the Bushmills distiller, and you can, raise a glass and he'll talk you through the whiskey, and you can just sit on the rocks and enjoy the view and watch the ocean go up against the rocks while sipping away at your Bushmills. And Carrick-a-Reedy Rope Bridge is another. This is right beside the Giant's Causeway. It's pretty exhilarating. It took me a while to get the nerve to cross it myself personally. This is in Ireland, so we do have a little bit of wind, and that definitely does sway a little bit. The guide joked to me, because I was clearly a little bit nervous when I was crossing this the first time. I've now done it many times since. But he was joking to me and said, "You know what? Don't worry. You only fall once." Because obviously if you fall off that, you're never coming back from it. But it's very safe, it's very fun, and the scenery around there is absolutely spectacular. There is a little fisherman's cottage actually down on the other side of that hill that you can see too. And right around the other side of the coast, so we're now up past the Giant's Causeway, and on the east side, it's the Gobbins Cliff Path Walk. So this just reopened a couple of years ago. It is, again, it's a decent hike. It probably takes 90 minutes to do the walk, but it's a cliff path guided walk right embedded into the cliff face. So you just have the water, the Atlantic Ocean, just splashing up over you. It's incredible. It really, really is great. And a funny thing the guides were telling me last time I was there, so it is new, the visitor experience is new, but the walk itself is actually, I think they're like 120 years old. And he was saying that back in the 1920s, it was actually quite a fancy day out for women. So you used to dress up in your heels and your nice gown, and you'd go and have tea on the cliff face. And he wasn't joking. This wasn't one of these stories. He showed me photos that it was a really special thing that people used to do way back when. Now you have your hiking boots on. You're not going to be wearing your heels on this one now.
Cool.
And then, yeah, just a different way to see it. If you don't fancy getting your feet wet and getting the ocean splashing up over you, you can ride the cliff face on Northern Ireland by horseback. This is called Coastal Canters. Again, one of those experiences you would have to book through a travel advisor, and you can walk, saunter by on the cliff edge and see things like Dunluce Castle that you can see there in the distance. So like ancient castle ruins right crumbling on the cliff face. It's amazing.
I think we're just going to go a little bit faster, Sandra, because we also have, we wanted to leave some time for making Irish coffee.
Sure. Well, yeah, sorry, I do talk a lot. But Belfast, an incredible city. It is just fun pubs, really, really good city nightlife vibe. And it was where the Titanic was built. So in there is the Titanic Visitors Centre. It's an incredible museum. It was voted world's best many, many times. And it even has a little roller coaster ride in the middle of it. So it talks about the myth and the legend of what was true from the movie and what wasn't true from the film, and the Harland and Wolff cranes that actually built the ship are viewable right across the river from this museum.
Oh, one thing that I wanted to point it out on the Titanic experience. If you, well, I'm a foodie, as you may know. So if you visit on a Sunday, you wanted to make an appointment to indulge in a Titanic afternoon tea there, which is so cool experience. And again, St. George Market, which is if you wanted an authentic taste of Belfast life, this is where you want to go and get all these different amazing food that you can have. And the Titanic Hotel. Sandra, do you want to talk about the Titanic Hotel for a sec?
Sure, yeah. So this is a hotel right opposite the visitor center, or that Titanic experience, and it is completely designed to look like the inside of the ship. And so they have lots of memorabilia in here, all authentic. They have lots of replicas. And the bedrooms themselves even have like the windows as if you were, berthing in the ship. So it's a really special place. And they have incredible lunchrooms. So even if you don't stay overnight, they can give you a little bit of a tour around the spot.
And even like the hallways and the corridors would look like that experience.
Yeah. And yeah, I wanted to chat about Black Taxi tours. So anyone who's interested in Ireland's political history, or, a little taste of contemporary Ireland, can take a Black Taxi tour. So obviously, Northern Ireland is part of Northern Ireland. Belfast is the heart of Northern Ireland, and Black Taxi tours will take you about a 90-minute tour around the city and highlight all the key monuments that really speaks to Northern Ireland's past. So, for example, they'll take you to the Peace Line Wall, which is the wall that separated the Loyalists from the Nationalists, or the Catholics from the Protestants, however you want to look at it. It will take you to the Falls Road, again, a Catholic area, and then take you to Shankill, which was the Protestant area, and just show you a bit of both sides of the city. It was a very separate city at one point. Now it's certainly not. It's a beautiful city now. You would certainly not realize that there was anything going on there, but obviously, way back when there was. It will take you past Crumlin Road Jail and tell you a lot about the stories of people who participated in the Troubles and things like that. And it will also take you to all of Northern Ireland's or Belfast's murals. So Belfast, as is Derry, is a very artistic city, and they used to speak to their politics via murals all over the walls. So it'll tell you the stories through the artwork all over the walls there. And yeah, I mentioned that it's, you know, just a really vibrant city. So pictured on the right there is Belfast City Hall. That's like, again, the jewel in Belfast's crown. And there is lots of amazing things like St. George's Market. It's an incredible food market right in the center of the city. And there is things like incredible food tours that are available in Ireland. So there's many different suppliers who can offer this to you. Taste and Tour NI is one of my personal favorites, and they'll take you around to lots of different really cute little spots, whether it's cheese boutiques or, you know, little the top floor of a little pub that you'd never find on your own, things like that. It's really cool. And Ireland is Game of Thrones territory, so if you've any Game of Thrones fans, you'll recognise this. It's the Dark Hedges, and then sites all over Northern Ireland that Game of Thrones was filmed in. There is something called Winterfell tours, so anyone who's interested in Game of Thrones can go about 40 minutes south of Belfast, and you can do Winterfell tours where they'll wrap you in Game of Thrones capes. You can try out archery, you can meet the direwolves. It's absolutely amazing. It's so much fun. I realized I would not last very long in Game of Thrones when I was there because I'm a terrible archer. But it is a lot of fun, and they can even take you for a drink around this old fire. And very nearby that as well, there is the Game of Thrones banquet experience, where they'll do a whole medieval banquet. You're nearly eating in the dark over candlelight, and they'll tell you stories about Game of Thrones and the filming locations there. And yeah, last but not least, my hidden gem, which is Tracy's Farmhouse Kitchen. This is another one of those signature experiences through the Embrace the Giant Spirit brand. And Tracy will take you into her own home, and she will bake bread with you, or, you know, whatever really recipe you want to make, but she's known for her breads. And she will teach you how to make traditional Irish dishes from the comfort of her own home, which is right on the shore of Strangford Lough, which is a beautiful lake very near Belfast. And she's also hilarious to boot, so that definitely helps.
So now is the time to make the traditional Irish coffee.
Okay, so has anybody made an Irish coffee before? Let me know in the comments. I want to see if we have any pros. I'm waiting for my kettle to boil, so it should boil now in 2 seconds. First, I'll talk you through my ingredients.
I'll stop sharing the presentation so then they could see you full screen.
Perfect. I'll step back a little bit. Okay, so the ingredients that you need for an Irish coffee is, of course, whiskey. So first up, I have my Black Bush Bushmills whiskey, or I have a Roe & Co. So Roe & Co. is a new enough whiskey. It's made by the people at Guinness. It doesn't really matter what whiskey you use once it's Irish. Just want to make sure that you can see everything there. I'm going to move my laptop back a little bit.
And sorry, for other people, you can ask your questions, and you can start putting your questions in the chat box. And while Sandra is making the Irish coffee, I'll try to answer, or we'll try to answer that. But feel free to put your questions in the chat box, or just sending it to me.
I have someone here saying it never tastes quite the same, but I do make it time to time, so it's good to hear. Hopefully this will give you some tips, but I'm sure you're making it perfect. Also we need, other than our whiskey, is our brown sugar. I actually tried making this with maple sugar to make it slightly Canadian, but traditionally we would just use regular brown sugar. And then you have your double cream, so just a standard double cream. Often what I would do is make a proper cafetiere of drip coffee for this. I'm going to use instant this time, which is slightly cheating, but just for the purposes of being quick and efficient, I will use instant. But you can just usually just use, you pour in your coffee separately. So first up, you have your glass. So hopefully you can see here. You have your glass, and you have to put a teaspoon in it, because we're going to put some boiling water in it. If you don't put your teaspoon in the glass, then your glass is going to break. So we top up our water. Usually what I would do here is wait for the water to warm the glass. I'd give it maybe a minute or two, let the water warm the glass, and then I would pour out the water and pour in my coffee. So for this, we're just going to use it straight, because I'm going to use instant. Then I will take a flat teaspoon of brown sugar, melt it into the hot water. Then the most important part is our liquid gold, which is our whiskey. Whiskey in Irish is called Uisce Beatha. Any guesses as to what Uisce Beatha means? Chat box again.
Cheers? Was that cheers?
What did you say?
Like cheers, or like to your health or something like that?
So that's sláinte.
Okay.
And Uisce Beatha is the Irish translation for whiskey. So we put our whiskey in. And Uisce Beatha means the water of life. That's what we call whiskey in Ireland. Then I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to just pop in my coffee, where usually I would just pour this straight into the glass from a cafetiere, but it doesn't really make a difference. So now we have our coffee. And then I have to stop. So I've stirred in the coffee, and I have to make sure that it stops spinning. So I have to make sure that the top of the glass and the top of the water is completely flat and not moving before I put in my cream. And this is the tricky part, and this is the one that sometimes goes wrong, and where your Irish coffee can all go to hell. But hopefully it won't for me today. It doesn't usually. But you rest your spoon right on the very top of the coffee here, and then you just gently pour your double cream. And what should happen is you get a nice creamy cream head. So you don't want your cream to filter down into your glass, which is what's going to happen if you keep it stirring, and it's what's going to happen if you don't put the brown sugar in first. The brown sugar is what keeps that elevated. And that is how you make your perfect Irish coffee. And then you raise your glass, and then you say sláinte, which is cheers.
That was fabulous, Sandra. Okay, so there are some questions that I have here, which one is about the best time, which we talked about, but again, depends on the festivals. So we talked about a few festivals, what you like and what your preferences are. So maybe fall or spring or shoulder season. But obviously, summer comes with the beautiful nature, and it was awesome. So there are some other questions around sharing those hidden gems and their names. So I'll be sharing that through the newsletter or the email communication that comes after this. So you should receive that in your inbox. So there's another question, Sandra, for you. When do you add the brown sugar?
You add the brown sugar immediately after the water. So you add the water, the hot water, you wait for that to warm up your glass for about a minute, maybe two, and then you can add the brown sugar. But just remember to keep your teaspoon in there, otherwise your glass is going to shatter.
Okay. So there are, let me scroll down and see whether there are any other questions. So we talked about those. So there's some questions around those, like festivals, which we talked about. So the Halloween, Galway, Oyster and Seafood Festival in September.
Blackfest in January for sure is a most not miss. And then New Year's Eve Festival, actually. We just started doing that the last 5 or 6 years. And it's called NYF Dublin. It's in Dublin City, and it's incredible. So NYF is another one then too. And then all through the summer, there's always something to do in summer. So music festivals and things like that. We have an incredible surf festival. So on the Wild Atlantic Way on the west coast, we're known for surfing. So Donegal, Achill Island, around there. And there is a surf festival called Ski Sessions. So any water sports people should definitely check that out.
Excellent. So I don't see any other specific question, but I wanted to thank all of you to decide to spend your evening with us. I hope that you learned something new. You took some, interesting experiences, some Irish experiences, some Irish education with you. And again, Sandra, thank you so much. I every time I speak with you, I learn tons of new things, and I think I'm an Irish specialist. It's challenging at times to come up in close to the amount of knowledge that you have. But for those of you who are following, so next on our virtual travel series, and next week we are going to Barbados, but not just resort and chilling by the ocean and all of that. So what I'm passionate about is the culture, history, food, and you know, beyond all these different places that a lot of us may have been. So I know a lot of people said they may have been to Ireland several times, but I'm sure that, you know, this view from hidden gems and you know, the festivals and all of that, it's a very unique perspective. So I encourage you to join us for our next virtual travel series. And again, for those of you again in Ontario, I'll be sharing more about local travel. As you some may know, that travel to some extent is opening up in Ontario, which we are so super happy about. And I'll be sharing about some of local travel in Canada as well. Sorry, Sandra, back to you.
I had nothing more to add other than just a massive Gurb Míle Maith. Just thank you for spending your evening with us. I know it's been nearly 2 hours, so I really appreciate your time. And Leila, thank you so much for inviting me on. I really appreciate it.
So how do we say cheers again? I'm so bad in languages.
Sláinte.
Sláinte. So Sláinte, Sandra, thank you everyone. And stay tuned for an email that comes with, you know, some other additional knowledge about the hidden gems and things that are interesting for you to know about Ireland. So thank you again. Have a great evening and stay tuned for further information. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Sandra, again.
Bye.